What's up, everybody? It's Hilliard Guess, and you guys are listening to the Break It Down show. Yeah.
Yeah, man, we've upgraded. We watch the Break It Shout Down show now too, and we're live on Facebook, YouTube, and LinkedIn. If you're on the YouTube side, you're watching, Jen, you want to know how to support the show, just click subscribe. That's the best way. There's a lot of other things you can do to help the show, but let's more importantly, instead of worrying about us, let's talk to our good friend, longtime friend now, Hilliard Guess.
Mhm.
Man, thanks for coming on the show.
What's happening, y'all? Bam, 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 bam.
I love it. Oh man. So listen, you're always busy. You always have your hands into like 15 different projects. Where are you at right now? What's the roster that you can talk about?
Still developing shows for some big producers right now, so that's fun. Um, some shows that I'm really proud of. One is a big Lord of the Rings type of thing that I can't necessarily talk about, but and it has a black lead, which will be different, than anything anybody's ever seen before. And it's in kind of in a what if world of Tolkien and all that stuff like that. So we'll see
Mm,
where that goes. Um, and then, as you know, I've been working on this documentary for 6 years called Full Circle: The Story of the New Dimensions, and they are a surf band from the '60s that they used to open up for like the Beach Boys and Jan and Dean and all these big, recording artists back in the '60s. And they were like, the thing that was different about them is they were like 12 to 14 years old. They made 4 albums. They signed shitty contracts like most people did back then.
yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
and they all, when they disbanded, when the Beatles and the British invasion came, it caused surf music to kind of go away, so to speak. Except for a few, like the Beach Boys, managed to survive. Here we are 60 years later, pretty much. You know what I mean? And so what happened was they decided 50 years later they wanted to come back and make this new album with like a new sound, to give it a new flair, just take some of their old songs and give it a new revision on it. And so I was brought in to direct this film. And at first I was hesitant because I write scripted movies and stuff, and
Yeah.
I'm also, I love music just like you and John do. So, when I came in, the company that brought me in to meet the five, there were 5 of them at the time who were alive, of the band, um, realized here I am with these black producers, and I'm the black director and writer, and here we are interviewing all these white guys for the '60s surf thing. And I immediately told myself, and you know me pretty well, Pete. I was like, "Oh, I have to do this."
Yeah.
You know what I mean? They don't expect us to do this. you know so that was my main reason why. And then when I pitched to them what I wanted to do, I said, so this is a movie about you guys coming back full circle to finish the thing you never finished. I said that is the thing we're going to get people to relate to, that everybody will understand. So if they don't like surf music or don't care about it, they'll at least be able to relate to that thing they never finished. So I make sure there's a whole segment on people talking about that thing that they didn't finish. It's not about surf music. You know what I mean? And that's the cool thing about this movie is, yes, it's about this band, but we're expanding 50, 60 years of their lives. So it's going to have a lot more themes and storylines that we're talking about. So
Since I've known you, almost from day one, you've been working on this project, talking about things
mhm.
that are never, finished. It's not that you haven't put effort into this, but dude, 6 years, right? I mean, if I
Actually,
would have,
maybe 7. I think about
yeah,
it. Yeah,
I
yeah.
mean, we were in Sacramento, you were doing a shoot,
Yeah.
there. I mean,
Well, you came on the set. Yeah.
I did.
Hmm.
And that's how long it's been. Is that normal for a documentary, or how come it's taking this long instead of like the standard, I don't know, 2 or 3 year shoot?
I think most documentaries take 2 to 3 years for the most part.
Hmm.
Mainly it's because you think about it like this. So you shoot the thing, right? And then you have to have a visual to go with the thing.
Right.
So a lot of the time is spent finding the right image,
Mm,
right? And it also depends on the subject matter or the subject person you're talking about in the actual story,
mm,
because there may not be that much visual on them.
right.
So you have to create or just be creative. That's why you see a lot of documentaries that'll have like a reenactment of something,
Right.
you know, And so we have that in our story too, because there's not a lot of footage of this band. So I reenacted, we cast these 5 or 6 kids, to play them as younger. And we just did a couple different little scenarios that we could squeeze in and spring through, throughout the whole story, so that
Right.
it felt like as if you understood who the people were. You know what I mean?
When do you think you're going to release this thing? I've seen the new sizzle reel. It looks awesome. I can't wait.
Thank you. Thank you. My goal is fall 2022.
Okay. So so about a year from
Yeah.
now.
Yeah, it's still gonna be a minute. And the reason is that the other part of it, to be 100%, we're doing this low budget. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Everybody's working on deferred pay, so it's like, the editor can only work when he can, otherwise we would have had a lot of things done already. But we're waiting for him, they're waiting for me with my schedule, you
Yeah.
know. So it's just it's a lot. But the good thing is I'm in the groove
Mm,
of the movie again, which is why I put it out now. It's like, let's redo it. It
right.
was 8 minutes long. It was at 8 minutes and 30 seconds long. Now it's down to 6.
Yeah.
So we trimmed some fat. We added a couple of new stuff in there.
Yeah.
Um, and I like to keep things really visual, and with movement and stuff. So we did the best we can for the budget we have. I think it's going to be awesome. And I was telling a producer friend of mine the other day, we were talking about, I sent it to him and he loved it. And he's like, dude, this could be on Netflix and
Yeah.
Hulu and all this stuff. And I was like, it could be on all those things just by the fact we have all these stars in this movie.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think we literally interviewed 50, 60 iconic surf people from back then. you
Yeah.
know so we could keep, it could be a series and we could keep going if we needed to. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
And because it's taken as long as it has, outside of the norm, and you're right, the low budget thing, one of the things you guys don't have the ability to fund is speed, right? You have to do it when you can do it.
yeah,
But people like Dick Dale die. They
yeah,
just run out of life, and that's because
yeah,
they've been in this game for a long time. Um, Things change, since we last talked about surfing. I met my biological father and a whole new family, and he was a surfer from that era.
really
Like he grew
good.
up in Orange County. And
hmm
so, I mean, these life moves on, right? So what's
hmm
changed with the movies since you started 5 or 6, 7 years ago?
Well, the most important thing that's changed is we don't have all the members.
Right.
Two of them have passed away since we started. And that's why you see in the sizzle, we focused on Jimmy Greenspoon, um, who, when we first started, that day I went to go meet the whole band, he was there.
Mhm.
So I was all excited, being a big fan of Three Dog Night. I was like, oh, this is going to be awesome. And I think not even 6 months later, he passed away,
Great.
before we even turned the cameras on.
Right.
We still were trying to develop and figure out what we're going to do, and raise the money, because most of the crew comes from Sacramento, which
Mm.
is why we're always shooting up there. you
Yeah.
know and so and like that concert scene you saw, we shot two big concert scenes, one outside at some big winery up there in Sacramento. I can't remember the name of it, forgive me, I wasn't there that day. And then the other one we shot that you saw was at Harlow's, right there downtown Sacramento, which I'm sure you're pretty familiar with.
Yeah.
um, and so, yeah, they brought in all those extras and all that. But anyway, so the most difficult things that we've been through was we lost two of us. So then we lost Danny Belsky
Mm.
2 years ago. So it's been a long process. So all those guys you saw on the when you saw the full band were stand-ins, people just being in there to keep the band. You know what I mean? They're not. There's only three of them.
Yeah. You're
You
telling a
know?
story about some ghosts now, right? Like you've
Yeah.
gotta evolve your story.
Yeah.
It's incredible that you get to do this. And when we
Mhm.
first started talking, I mean, look, you were already a professional screenwriter, but when you look back those
Mhm.
5, 6 years and how far you've come, what are you now? Like who is Hilliard Guess, and what are you professionally, like when you say, "Oh, I'm a screenwriter," a lot of people can say that and they haven't sold a script, or
Right.
maybe they have something option, but that's not you. You're way past that.
Yeah, I felt like I was way past that 5, 6 years ago, which is the irony. But what I've learned is there's things I enjoy more,
Mm,
right? So I always say I'm a writer producer first. I actually never even tell people I'm a director. That's the
mm,
irony. You know what I mean? I'm actually pretty good at it. I just know there's so many people who really study the craft of, trying to be freaking, the next whoever. So I'm
Yeah.
like, yeah, I'll let them do it. You know what I mean? I would much rather, I have a lot more fun running the set, or helping you develop the script and get it to the screen. Working with post production, working with line producers. I'm much more better managing than
Mhm.
I am being the guy who has to direct the thing.
Mm.
I do it because I know that I know how to, and I know I'm good at it. And when I'm a producer, I'm the third eye with my director, no matter who it is. I come in and, I make sure everything's solid and organized, and there's no fires anywhere to put out. And I place myself by Video Village, and I just sit and watch. And every time they huddle, I huddle with them. A lot of people are like, "You huddle with the director." I was like, "It's my fucking movie."
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Yes. I'm
Yes.
part of the team. I don't have to speak. I just let them know I'm there to support. I
Mhm.
listen, I hear it, and I go, "Does everybody agree?" They all agree. I'm like, "Great, let's move." You
Yeah.
know what I mean? Let's keep going. And I found for the directors I've worked with, um, for example, here's an example. A few years ago, I produced this pilot. You heard recently about Helena Hutchinson, who passed away from she was shot on that film.
Right. Yeah.
She was
Rush.
she I hired her on a project,
Oh,
and the DP, myself, and her. Every time we would all huddle together, and talk, and I would challenge them on stuff. You know what I mean? And I knew she was going to make it. She had something special. She had a great eye. We looked at a lot of other DPs, but she just stood out. And she worked for us a lot cheaper because I knew she needed to work on our film. You know
mm.
what I mean?
Yeah.
So anyway, I know I'm jumping a lot. You know what I mean? That's why my show's called The
Yeah.
Ransom.
Well, let me jump in, and I wanna ask you briefly about let me just do the Rush thing now because I did a show with, another guy who grew up in Benicia, it turns out. Didn't know
Okay.
this, and, he's an actor, and he actually had just done a shoot out in, I think, Arizona. Same kinda thing, desert scene,
Yeah.
and with Web actually borrowed my shotgun to do some of the scenes.
Uh-oh.
And he's like, we just shot a movie with guns, and it's like it's impossible if you do basic safety and screen safety. He's like, it's just impossible to hurt someone because you have too many safety checks. That was kind of his play on it. But I don't know, what are your thoughts? I mean, especially now, like you're all going to have to, like, in the back of your mind, front of your mind, you have to say, no one's dying on this set because of a gun going off, right? So, what are your thoughts on that?
There's protocols on these things, and somebody skipped the protocol. They skipped this. They skipped one of the things that we usually do. There's usually a series. Now, I'm not the pro at this. An
Yeah,
AD, could tell you much better what's supposed to happen. I want to be clear about that.
yeah,
You know what I mean? I
yeah,
have been on the set and watched this thing happen. I haven't had to do it myself. Now,
right.
let's just be clear. But I've watched the process. The handler, who is usually in charge of props, brings the gun inside of a box. It's not just like some weapon sitting out. You know what I mean? Now, if it's a rifle, it's probably a different situation.
Sure.
But they are usually handling the thing. They watch it. They're standing there next to it during the process, show you the gauge and all that stuff. You know how all that stuff works as a military guy. I don't know all the quite the right terms because I'm not a gun dude. They open it up, they show you there's no bullets in there. They squeeze the trigger, you know what I mean? They do all the safety things you need to do. They show here's how it's on safety. They do all that with the crew all around, right? And the actor who's in the set. And then they usually check it again just to be sure, hand it to the AD or whoever's in the scene. They hand it, check it, hand it to the actor. The actor checks it. See what I mean? There's usually all these steps. Are you there?
Yeah, I'm here. I'm here.
You know what I
Yes.
mean?
Yeah.
Okay, sorry, you froze on me for a second.
Oh, okay.
So there's usually all these steps that are happening before the actor even touches it.
Right.
You know what I mean? So what I understand that happened, and I don't know the facts, is one of those steps skipped.
Mm.
The handler said it was okay. The AD didn't check it because they said it was okay. They were in a rush. They were like, let's go, let's go, let's go, let's go. They were like, well, the handler did it, so why do I need to do it? You know what I mean? Instead of going, well, let me check, this is my set as the AD. Now, I'm not blaming them. I'm just generalizing whoever missed the step, right?
Yeah.
So that's what, and then now you and I know Baldwin has been in million movies. He
Yeah.
shot many guns. He should know how to check his gun too. You know what I mean? I'm not blaming him, but kind of. You know what I mean? That's just me. I'm just going, you should know how to do that too. But what
Yeah.
happens on these sets, and this is, I'm also going to give him the benefit of the doubt too. So don't get it twisted.
Yeah.
Everybody on the set is a master at their thing.
Right.
So he's the master at the actor. You're the master at props. Why would I assume you didn't do this thing? You know what I mean? So I understand why he's that way too and why he's not in the wrong. But I also look at it from a low budget point of view. And I'm somebody who used to be an actor, if I
Yeah.
had to shoot a gun, and I have at least 3 or 4 times in projects, I check the gauge. I see what's going on. You know what I mean? Because I want to know. I'm already nervous enough holding the gun, right?
Right. Right.
I'm just that dude. So I want to make sure there's nothing in there and you're not pointing it up. It's all that stuff. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I agree. And just in general, when you walk around on a military post, even while you're deployed, you don't have rounds in the chamber. You don't usually even have rounds in the gun at all, unless you're specifically guarding something, right? You have a weapon, but it's completely empty. And when you go say into the chow hall, the dining facility to eat, you will perform the act of clearing that weapon because it's just part of the muscle memory. Have I done it? Check, look,
Right.
shoot it into the barrel. And when I say shoot it, I mean you're pointing and you're squeezing the trigger, but there's nothing coming out, right? Because you're proving that there is no bullet there. Every time you go into that building, every time you go into that, whatever it is, we do it all the time. Because I don't know what happened there either. But I do know that if Alec Baldwin doesn't pull that trigger, those people are shot. Neither one of those people are shot. And
Right.
if you have a gun, you at some point, doesn't matter if you're the master or not, you have to be willing to bet someone's life when you pull that trigger. And
Well, there's one other thing, as the stories go along. This is why this is going to take months for them to really figure this whole thing out, as you know. But one of the stories that I heard, and it may or may not be true, is some of the crew took the weapons and went and played bullet practice with it earlier. That never happens on the set. Nobody just goes and takes the guns and, you know what I mean? I'm like, what handler allowed that to happen? That's weird,
Right.
and brought it back and didn't check it for themselves. You know what I mean? It's like if I allowed you to use my car, I'm just spitballing a regular whatever, right? Or here you go, my scooter, right? Something I care about,
Yeah.
right? If I allowed you to take my scooter and I know I'm going to go take my scooter out for a ride, I'm going to get on my scooter and check my scooter, right? I'm make sure the brakes feel right, make sure my lights are on, you know what I mean? Make sure it starts really quick, whatever the thing is. So that's why I don't understand how it came back and nobody checked it, properly at least. So I don't know.
It's a tragedy, and yeah, we'll let the legal system work itself out.
Correct.
And for the most part, I think the industry, especially after Brandon Lee lost his life, the industry really put in these measures. And that's one thing that the movie industry gets beat up on a lot of different things because of people talking and not being experts and all that. But when it comes to making movies, y'all are good. I mean, you guys make things safe that are impossible. Like you see those old movies. I was watching this thing about making old movies and like in the 30s and stuff. And they put actors up on a flying carpet and they could do that visually, but no one's got a harness on, no one's got a helmet. They're just sitting on a carpet 40 feet in the air, just getting whipped around the stage. But I bet they had for their time, whatever
Yeah,
kind
they
of
wouldn't do that now.
No.
No way. No way. Yeah,
Um,
I mean, think about it like this now. I don't mean to interrupt you. I'm sorry. Think about it this way. You know how how parents are with their kids today? Everybody coddles them, and they wear a helmet when they ride their bikes and their skateboard. We didn't do none of that. You know what I mean? So it's the same theory. So you could just imagine on the sets they treat them like their kids again.
yeah.
You know what I mean?
I want to get back into your
Sure.
project because you said another interesting thing, and I always like talking about the social side of this stuff because I learn a lot. So one of the things we saw, and this is not recent, but it's recent enough that we remember.
Mhm.
Gal Gadot is being cast as Cleopatra, and people were losing their minds because she's not really Egyptian. It turns out, Cleopatra was Greek, if anything, because that's what she was in that time. And Gal grew up, I don't know, 400 miles from Egypt. I mean, so how do we sort these things out? You say you're a black guy directing a surf music movie, and that's weird, and that's okay, right? Like, there's no problem with that. But how do we get past worrying about who a person is and closer to, like, let's just, like, why? When do we get to stop worrying about that? When do we get the thing? And Gal Gadot has it right to have that role. She's the one they picked. Is that bad? I don't see how that's bad.
Here's the thing, and I'm going to preface this by saying this is only my opinion,
Sure.
right? So I don't speak for the whole black monolith here, okay? Because we're not one, right? Knowing that she comes from there doesn't bother me. Like, if they were to cast, Reese Witherspoon, I'd have a problem with it. You know what I mean? Now she could act her butt off. It's not about her acting. It's about where we are today in this climate, right? In this climate, we're at a place where we feel that we are no longer happy or accepting with just because somebody's a star and we have said story that somebody white should be playing the role because they're the big stars.
Mhm.
We're saying, wait a minute, why is it not that said other person of that what do you call it, that race can play that role? Why are we still back there where Yul Brynner and you know what I mean, people are painting their faces, dark skin or whatever to play these roles when there's so many amazing actors who could kill it? Your excuse is we need a star to do it, right?
Right.
In order to sell through all the territories and whatever. What we say now is, what about this? Bring in somebody you don't recognize as much, right? And then fill it with a bunch of other actors who are. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that, just as an example, right? But in a movie like that, see, I would say there's lots of historians who could prove to you, like you said, in your research, you realize she's probably more Greek.
Right.
There's lots of people who think she's more, Africanish.
Sure.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
So you're gonna have the debate. So you want to at least find some sort of a middle ground of that, right? Now, for me, knowing that she comes from there is great. The problem is she still looks very white. You almost
Yeah.
have to go, oh yeah, I think I see it. You know what I mean? You
Yeah.
have to double check. And
Yeah.
if you remember, just to change the subject for a quick second, if you remember the new movie that came out, Lin-Manuel Miranda's movie In the Heights,
Mhm.
that just came out, about Puerto Rican and Dominican. Everybody in the movie, 99% of them were very white, light-skinned, Dominican and Puerto Rican people. In the Heights, you go in the Heights, there's all kind of blacks and what, you know what I mean? And so it was a big thing about, really, in 2021,
Yeah.
we're
Yeah.
still doing this game, you know what I mean? So I
Right.
think that's the sum of, and there's other people who could say this a lot better than I can.
Sure.
But that's some of the pushback you're getting is we want to see representation. We don't want to see just because somebody thought we should cast somebody that's okay.
Yeah.
You didn't take the time to really cast. You just went, let's get a star.
Right.
You know what I mean? Somebody
Yeah.
who has a little bit of color in them. Okay, let's just find this person instead of really putting a call out and finding a face.
Well,
You
this
know,
is the problem with making things black, white, and other. Like Gal Gadot, being from Israel, is in fact an Asian. Like
yep,
Israel is on the Asian continent.
yep.
Someone from Yemen is Asian. Someone from Timor Leste is Asian. We don't look at it that way. We look at Asian as being something else, like it's a little more unclear. So saying someone's white, well, what the hell does that even mean? And if you were to say a person of color, you can't mix Puerto Ricans, Colombians, and Eskimo folk together and say they're the same folk, right? We got to do better. If we're really gonna try to be more authentic and inclusive, we've got to do a better job of that in general, and not just make these silly categories. I mean, and you, like you said, black folks aren't a monolith. what kind of black folk are you from? All of a sudden you have all these ethnicity and other questions. Is that just too much though? Is it just too hard to take it to that level?
Well, I mean, think about it like this. I was just talking to a producer about this the other day, and I was explaining to him about, like on every show, there's usually now one token black person on the show, right?
Mhm.
So if the showrunner is a white guy and he's writing a show about New York hip hop, right? They bring on a black writer, to be the eyes and ears of the show,
Right.
right? For the show. Well, here's what happens is you get stuck in this thing where you're expected to be able to be the voice of the characters, the nuances in the culture and all that. But here's the thing that they forget. If you're doing a show about hip hop, this is just a spitball example, by the way.
Sure, sure.
There's no show, right? But if you're doing a show about hip hop in the 80s in the Bronx and you hire a black writer from Compton, let's just say, there'll be things they'll understand because as a black man, we have
Yeah.
a lot of similarities, but nuances on the street will be different, right? And to said showrunner, they're like, well, I brought in a black person. And the person from New York is going, but you didn't bring him from New York. You know what I mean? And they don't really understand the things that we do here. Pete, we both grew up in the Bay. You know what
Yeah.
I mean? The way we hyphy up, things were different there.
Yeah.
They didn't hyphy in,
No.
New York. You know what I mean? So it's like, I'm just using that as an example.
Yeah, yeah,
But
yeah.
so the thing, even our hip hop is somewhat different.
Sure.
The way we dress is somewhat different. You know what I mean? All that stuff is there. So there's so much nuance that is always missing. So what we're fighting for and asking for, here's something you don't know, Peter. All those projects to tell you that I'm doing right now,
Yeah.
I'd say out of the 6 projects I'm doing where I'm developing shows, 4 of them, me and my producing partner Pamela are developing these shows based on something somebody white had wrote. And then they decided, well, in this climate, we need somebody black to take it over and bring it to the screen. So that's what happened. We read it and we're like, oh, yeah. Well, as soon as you start off with the first character is the white dude, we already know what the problem is. How is this a show about, Harlem in the 20s and the lead person is a white dude?
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's little stuff like that because they're doing it from what they know.
Right. And
You know what I mean?
I totally agree. Like we have to get better at doing this. And if you're going to make a movie about hip hop in the 90s from New York, you like you don't need to include all races and ethnicities. Yes, it's New York, but this movie's primarily going to be about black dudes, because that's primarily who did that stuff. Yes, there are all kinds of other people around them, but you also have to be able to tell the story that's true. I wanted to ask you this real quick because
Sure.
I was thinking about when I saw Black Panther, the early part of the movie, when they're in Oakland, they show a basketball hoop that's made out of a milk carton. And I'm like,
Yep.
that's not Oakland. That's not Oakland at all. Like that, and that right there in that moment for me, Hilliard, they lost me right there because I'm like, nope, see, you guys didn't get Oakland right. And I know that's a dumb thing, but man, it mattered to me,
That didn't bother me, and I can't say that I haven't seen that before on the West Coast. It just may not be as prevalent, where you probably have been. You got to remember that the thing about something like that is
I
this.
played ball in Oakland, by the way.
No,
So
no, no. Hear me out. Hear me out. Just hear me out. That's not where I'm going. Where I'm going is this. In the hood. Now I'm talking about the hood, and the
yeah,
hood means every hood.
yeah,
Kids, and this same thing. You can go to England. Same thing. They play with cans as a soccer ball, right? So
yeah,
whatever you can find that makes the hoop is relevant. That's the thing. It doesn't matter what it is. It could have been a steering wheel, for a car. I've seen that. You know what I mean? So it's whatever it is that makes it work for you. So that's why it didn't bother me that it was that, because I went, oh, the kids went, oh, that.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? It didn't matter that they just needed something, and that could have been in New York, that could have been in the South, it could have been in England, anywhere they would have found something like that. If it fit, the ball could fit, it would work. That was
In
my
my
whole point.
defense, though, when you were writing
Sure,
for
sure.
that show with what was that show about the school about all the crazy
Deadly
assassins?
Class.
Yes, Deadly Class. You put an "It's It" in there because that is the Bay Area, right? You had that as your character's like, I just got out of jail. I'm going to get me an ice cream sandwich. But he didn't say ice cream sandwich. He said whatever you could say legally because you can't say "It's It." And that's the detail I'm talking about. You can still do that in Oakland. You can
Mhm.
still show that. But someone who isn't from Oakland made the call on that milk crate hoop, and it took me out of the movie. That's all I'm saying. I'm not saying it's a bad movie or anything, but that's how hard it is to get that detail right. Because I promise, if you had a person from the hood in Oakland, they wouldn't have put that in there. Because I played basketball all over the place, all over the place out
Mhm.
there. I've never seen that. I've seen broken backboards, but that's also before that era, before Daryl Dawkins brought all that stuff in. Anyhow, that's just me
Yeah.
talking about that stuff.
It's all good. I mean, that's the cool thing about what we do is it should spark conversation.
Yeah,
You know what I mean? And you're not always going to get everything 100% right. It's like I said, for me, it didn't bother me as much because I took it that it could have been anything.
sure.
You know what I mean? And you saw it that I never saw that. And I'm
Yeah,
saying I have seen that, but and even where I saw it was a little bit different than that,
yeah,
right? But it was a milk carton, and it was in the bay.
yeah,
You know what I mean? It was back when I was, a kid and stuff like that. But it was just some kids like on a little telephone pole thing. It wasn't like
yeah.
that inside the park. You know
Right.
what I mean? It was
Yeah.
just kids. They were just being creative. That's why for me it was like anything that we could grab would be that.
Right. Right.
And steering wheel or whatever makes the round shape. You know, that's hood. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
All right. Fair enough. Fair enough.
Yeah.
That's why I wanted to ask you that because
Yeah, no, no
it
problem.
is interesting, and you're right. Like you see a lot of improvised stuff in a lot of places because poor folks are going to do what poor folks do, and
Mhm.
if that means a milk crate, then that means a milk crate. So, uh, moving past that and getting
Mhm.
into the projects that aren't the new dimension, what else is out there?
Oh man. Like I said, I was telling you earlier, we have a couple shows we're pitching right now. My Sylvester script is back on play again,
Yes.
at a company. So we'll see. We'll see. A big star is interested. We'll see. I can't mention who they are, of course, So we'll see with that. A Black Wall Street is back in play, possibly, even though there's some new Black Wall Street stuff coming up. You know, I just talked with a company about actually writing a new show
Mm.
in the Black Wall Street world, but it's not about Black Wall Street. It's about everything around it. You know what I mean? So, which I really like. So I pitched them a new way that I would do a take on it. So I'm just waiting to see what they're going to do with that. Um, Let me see. Yeah, I'm back to trying to get on shows again, which I haven't been trying to do for 3 years. I've just been developing shows, you know, which is cool because I always try to encourage writers, to get to a place where you can develop. You just learn so much. It
Mm.
really does help you get ready to run your shows, when you do that because you learn, especially when you're working with really good companies and you have to go in and pitch to them and show them how you're going to run the show and what you would do here. And it's just a lot of teaches you a lot, and being a good manager as I am already, it already just lets them know they're in good hands. You know what I mean? And then
Yeah.
my producing partner, is a big casting director, and she's so good with story. So just our little double team, works really well with what we bring to the table. You know what I mean?
We talked to Tony Toast that one time on the show. Everybody should check that out. It's a good
Mhm.
episode. Tony basically emerged and then ultimately took over
Took
the
over.
show Empire. Right. Yeah. Like he's like, that's
Hmm.
my shit. Nobody
Yeah.
nobody knows that world better than Tony. I mean, he worked at a
Yep.
pickle factory for crying out loud. And he has been as successful as anybody could ever hope to be as an emerging writer and just ride up the thing. And he's done projects since
Yep.
then, and they're all good. but
Mhm.
nothing has taken off for him. I mean, he definitely makes money. You know, he gets projects, he gets to work on things, but it's really hard to have something take off as much as Longmire just stays playing steadily on Netflix, right?
Yep.
Is that, I mean,
Yeah,
is that
he's
the
not
norm?
he's not you know,
Yeah,
it's very normal. I was just reading on Facebook. I think I told you I had that reggae show that I was
yeah,
working on for Reggie Hudlin a couple of years ago. The guy who I took it over from um, had posted something on Facebook this weekend about he was telling the story about how um, there have been lots of ups and downs in his life, and he's finally at a place where he's got a show and he's got a big movie coming out, and all these things are happening. But he took us back, beat by beat about how like he had this show in development, and it all looked like it was going to great. It was all like it was going to go, and then boom, they're like, "Sorry, you're fired." And he had this big agent, and the agent's like, well, that didn't work, so thank you very much, this isn't working. You know what I mean? And so the story that you learn and all that is the industry. The industry is, are you hot now? If you're hot, we love you, and if you're not doing us any good. you know that's why I constantly am putting myself out there, making my own project. All these things you hear about are things that I got.
hmm
My reps aren't getting most of these jobs from me. These are me going out, finding them, knowing people, whatever, coming across them. They hear about me. I pitch them what I would do, and then I get it, and then I send it to them, and let them do the paperwork and whatever. And that's really what happens, even when you're at the big agencies, you know? And so, um, but what happens is now I've given them ammunition to go out and sell things further for you, or to ask for a bigger to move your quote up a little bit because the last thing did whatever. So you're helping them. A lot of my friends would just take the job and say, well, I got it. And I'm like, no, 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 no. It looks a lot better coming from my reps than it does coming from me. you know Even if they get me $10 more, it's better. You know what I mean? Or a better credit, whatever the thing is. What we're always looking for is money and the credit,
right,
you
right.
know? So that's really what it's all about.
Yeah, and even then, it's still hard, right? Like, the folks who can let projects come to them are very, very rare in your industry.
Yeah, I mean, there's only a chosen few. And like we talk about it a lot on the Committee of Black Writers at the Writers Guild,
Mm,
about how, there's only, 7 or 8 of us black writers that are the ones that are thought of. All the Issa Rays and the Lena Waifs and the, all these people who are friends of mine who are amazing, but that's who they think about. They forget there's all these other people. So they're the ones, the turnaround keeps happening, that they get these overall deals, and this happens, as opposed to all these other people coming up. It's the people who are already there. So to Hollywood and to the world, it looks like, what are you talking about? You have all these people. It's like, yeah, they're the same people who were there 3 years ago.
mhm,
You know what I mean? There's still room for all these other people too, right?
right,
So that's the thing that we don't see. Whereas when it comes to our white friends, it now goes up from, instead of just these 10 people, now there's 300 of them.
mm,
You know what I mean? And that you could name off the top of your head, just bam, 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 bam. You could just keep going.
right,
Who have these big deals and these production companies and all these big things happening for them, and there may be 10 of us that you can name off the top of your head. you know, and that has to change. And so we're starting a lot of new programs. We're about to start this one for mid-level writers. um, which this is for TV and for film,
mhm,
where say you sold one movie to Lifetime, for example, and you're waiting on your next job, and you could be further along. So you'd get in this program. And what somebody asked me the other day, if I had my own program, what would I do? And I said I would have a program for mid-level BIPOC writers, right? Where in the end we all end up with an overall deal at whatever the company is, right? So that way you have money in your pocket. It's not just some program you went to and you end up with nothing, right? Hollywood is all about giving mentorship to writers, especially people of color. They
Mhm.
don't realize a lot of us are actually ready to do shit. We don't need the mentorship.
Yeah, yeah,
You know,
yeah,
for some reason they always think, "Oh, you haven't done a big thing, so you need help." No, bitch, we've done it on a smaller scale. We just need more money.
yeah.
You know what I mean?
I
And
do.
so that's what I'm looking for, is building some sort of a program where the
Right,
mid-level writers are able to come out of it. You know, because remember, a lot of people are doing what I'm doing. They're making their own projects. They're already directing little indie movies or digital series and all kind of stuff. They've been in charge. They know what it's like to run a set, to do post, all that. Those people are ready to move forward on these projects. They don't need to come into your show as a staff writer. You know what I
right,
mean? They're already past that, you know. But Hollywood doesn't see like that. All they see is you don't have a list of all these hot shows you've been on, so you don't know. You
right.
know, and you've heard me say this before, and this is just a real thing in Hollywood. We always say this. We're usually speaking about white men over 50, by the way. So no offense to you,
That's me.
but this is what we're talking about. In
Yeah.
general, this is a general, by the way. It seems like in Hollywood, most white men over 50 get their doors open because of opportunity, right? They happen to be at the right place, et cetera, and they get there based on, you know what? I think we'll put some effort into them,
Right.
whereas we have to prove by our resume, right? Our
Yeah.
resume has to say you've done the thing. They're much more willing to give the opportunity or the chance to somebody else like that. you know and we talk about it a lot, even on my show. Chris, who we'll talk about the directors that he knows, who they come out with their first movie and it's a bomb, you know and then 2 years later they're directing some freaking Jurassic Park 3, whatever the hell. You know what I mean? And it's
Yeah.
like, whereas we have a bomb and you never see them ever again.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, you guys always get another opportunity because they're like, well, let's try them one more time. But with us, they're like, well, it didn't work.
Right.
You know what I mean? It's like, that was one person.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know what I mean? But they put us all in that whole, you know, thing. We're not a monolith, you know.
It's it seems externally there's a couple of things that have evolved in the industry. I mean, like when we first started hanging out, there was a hole in the ground behind your studio, behind your office where a new studio is going
Yeah.
to be. That studio building's now been there for a couple of years. There's,
Yeah.
you know, BYU has a streaming platform. I mean, there's a lot of places and there's more people in more screens watching things. So it seems like there's a lot more opportunity. And then I don't watch a lot of TV, but when you watch TV, especially commercials, you see a lot different skin tones across the board. It's almost like they're like, we have an
I've
Asian
noticed
person.
it too.
Right. So
Mhm.
that seems like it's better, but I also know that Hollywood does a lot of eyewash for things. And you're like, okay, it seems better. And yes, there is a little better, but what do you think? Is it getting better? Is it advancing at a rate that makes sense? Or are we still talking about the
It's an
same problem?
illusion.
Okay.
It's an illusion. They're not afraid to put it on the screen. What they don't do it is put it behind the screen. This is the thing that we keep talking about year after year. You know, those commercials you're talking about, I bet you 9 out of 10, they're full of these white advertisers who are making this product. 9 out of 10, I bet you. You know what I mean? For example, there's some commercial out right now. I'm not going to call it out, but I was watching with my husband over the holiday, and there's these like 2 or 3 black kids, like an Asian girl, and I can't tell if it's a Hispanic kid, and they're looking at this like jungle scene with like tigers and like monkeys doing whatever. I don't know what it is.
Mhm.
And I was like, this is the most offensive thing I've ever seen in my life. And I turned to him and went, I know somebody wrote this shit. Like that. And they cast, there was nobody white in the thing, just all these people of color in a jungle scene.
Uh-huh.
And the kids are all like, whoa, dude, oh my God, whatever the hell. And I'm like, who thought this was okay?
That
You know what I
commercial
mean?
is
You
bad.
know what I'm talking about?
Oh, I know exactly what you're talking about. And
Yeah,
it's bad for so many reasons, and it comes from a company that doesn't get it. Let me, I wanna echo something you said earlier, 'cause I learned from you when you teach me these things, 'cause we all wanna be a better human, and
sure.
this really enlightened me. And you said the same thing. You said, yeah, you might see black folks or whatever folks on camera, but when you go to pitch that movie, you're not sitting across from black folks. You're sitting across from a bunch of white people, executives. And as much as I'm a white guy over 50, I'm not in any way included any of that stuff. I'm also not in that club. So I don't know what color I am, but if you're not part of that crew, you're
Mhm.
not getting in, no matter what. And we do have to get better at that. Why aren't there, you said, why aren't there black people greenlighting projects?
But see,
Shit, I don't know.
that's exactly the problem, Pete, is that this is what we're trying to ask for. So this is what happens. So the studios, well, you remember we put out the Dear Hollywood letter, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
We're asking Hollywood to change the shit that they're doing, right? So what happens is they say, okay, we're going to change some things. We're going to start a new program for BIPAC writers, and we're going to mentor them, right? They still keep doing the same thing. None of them are doing the thing I just mentioned a minute ago, right?
Right.
Where they take all these people who are Issa Rae before she had Insecure. I know a bunch of them who are on that level, including myself, who know how to make a show.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? On a smaller scale, imagine if we had some money behind us, right?
Right.
So instead, they go, well, let's make a program for these people and bring in some, a couple of these white, showrunner mentors for them, and maybe one or two black, showrunner mentors to help them through, to guide them through, to get them on a staff. And I'm saying, stop, right? Keep the program, but now let's do another one,
Hmm.
right? Where all these writers end up with $200,000 or whatever it is when it's done, and an overall deal, you know, and all of them could take some of the projects that we have, and go do something. Let us have a shoot a sizzle for something that we did, something. You know what I mean? And instead of just having a mentorship and there's no money involved, there's no what, it's bullshit. They can all afford it. I tell you right now.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Yes, they can afford it. Trust me.
Yeah.
And I always make this joke about this on the show all the time about when it comes to staff writers, they only have a certain amount of money, right? When it comes to bringing in a certain star, when it comes to bringing in certain special visual effects, they always have the money for it. There's always extra money in the, in the jar, if you will, in the budget somewhere. But when it comes to, I can't tell you how many of my friends who are black or Latinx or Asian or Native American who have to be a staff writer 2 or 3 times.
Right.
I can't. I think I only know one white person that I can remember in 10 years who's told me they had to do it more than once. One. Now there may have been more. I just don't know who they are.
Right.
Right. I can tell you dozens of black people and everything else, BIPOC, who've done it over and over and over. You know what I mean? The same freaking thing. Oh, we don't have it in the budget. You know what I mean? And what happens is every single time, um, so let's say this. So we start a show, right? The room starts, right? And all the staff writers' deals are all done. They know what they're going to make every week, right? Et cetera, et cetera. Well, the upper levels, the co-EPs, the supervisings, whatever, all those people, we're in the room sometimes and their deal's not even done yet. So that means what? There's money,
Hmm.
but they're saving it for the important people.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And guess what? They're trying to get them for cheaper too.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So, and then you find out, you can't even pay this person 3 or 4 or 5 grand a week, you know, but you can pay, some actor who's number 4 on the call sheet, you know, 40, 50 grand a week. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? It's crazy how the it's such a big difference, you
And
know?
by the way, the people that own the houses in the hills or on the beaches, sure, some of
Yeah.
them are actors, but most of them you never heard of, you know,
Yeah.
and they're not going check to check. They they get taken care of way early,
Oh yeah,
yeah,
for
they're
sure.
always gonna get their money, and they're not worried about 2 or 3K a week. I mean, that's
No.
I was up there going to go do a show fairly recently, and I saw somebody come out of their house, and I'm like, I have no idea who that guy is, and I tried to look it up, and he didn't even have an IMDb page.
Hmm.
It's like they make money. They're so high level that the money
Yeah.
is well, they get a good big fat cut of it. And you're right, we've got to do a better job of I don't know, pushing that down, but figuring out how to not just black folks too. And by the way, just for anybody who's watching and doesn't know, Hilliard is a busy dude. He not only is great at his job, he's great at everything, but one of the things Hilliard does, he gives back. There's always junior writers in his office. He's always working at the guild, talking, imparting knowledge. His show, the Screenwriters Rant Room, which is attached here on the screen. If you ever want to learn about screenwriting and understand how it really works, you got to start right there, because the dude knows, and the people he has on, they know, and you get the straight, like, there's no pulling punches with what you do. And so, just in case anybody ever wonders, man, you are awesome. You are awesome at this, and you're an awesome storyteller. And every time you talk to me on the show, I always learn things from you, because you're just so insightful and clear-minded on the things that you are passionate about.
But here's the thing, I listen to your show a lot too. One of the things that being a moderator, interviewer has done, and I bet it's done the same thing for you, is made you a better listener. So when you listen well, you're able to think before you speak, for the most part, unless you go off on a crazy rant like I do, right? But so it allows you to do that, and you hear so many different stories all the time, so many different journeys. And like, you've heard me say this before. I always say my show is a screenwriting show about how, it's freaking Seinfeld, for God's sake, and it's the show where, you get to really go on a ride and a journey and learn how Pete Turner, went from Northern California and traveled the world as a spy. You know what I mean? Whatever the thing is, you get to see the journey, and it's not just, oh, I came from, Northern California, I went to the Marines, I was this and like that. And, and I had a kid when I was young. You're skipping everything. No, you can slow down and tell us the stories, because we get it. Sometimes people are like, oh, your shows are 1.5 hours, 2 hours long. It's like, man, it's long. And I was like, take the game though, listen to the game, and you can hit the pause button and start it over later. You know what I mean? Do it while you're getting dressed, while you're driving in the car to work or whatever. You know what I mean? It will make things go by so much faster. You know what I mean? So anyway, I jumped.
Yeah, you're right about that. And people will say, "Oh, your shows, why don't you do 3-minute shows?" Like, I can't get done what needs to get done in 3 minutes. Like, I wouldn't just listen to 3 minutes yourself. Just pick 3 minutes and just listen.
Yeah,
I educate myself along the way here too, and I don't learn that fast.
No, and I've been interviewing like Jordan Peele and Barry Jenkins for the Writers Guild podcast, because we're doing the 101 most like the best scripts written in the last 2 decades or something. And I have like 15 to 30 minutes to interview them. I'm like, that is not enough time for me to talk to them. You know what I mean? So I have to really figure out what it is I'm going to talk about, and it's hard, when you, especially somebody you admire and something you love, you want to have a conversation,
Well, you also don't want to cover the same ground again, right? I know you're into this too, because I've heard you say it on your show. But neither one of us wants to ask Jordan Peele the same damn question he's been asked 100 times about the same damn movie. I mean, come on, what's the point, right? Like, let's give the audience something new. I can go hear that answer on 100 different episodes.
Exactly. So I'm trying to figure out what you have to figure out what that is. One of the things that I did with Barry Jenkins was I just talked to him like a screenwriter, about the things that I loved, and here's why on the page you work for me. You know what I mean? And he was like, I'd have never really been able to talk to a writer about this like this. You know what I mean? He's like, I don't want this to end. I want to keep talking, because you know what I mean? It makes us have a conversation. And plus I know him, so we could jabber about whatever. But I had 30 minutes, to talk to him about his freaking, one of the best scripts out there for Moonlight, and it's difficult. I could have went 2 or 3 hours easily.
Easy.
You know what I mean? Yeah, for sure.
There's a thing when you have that point of view. It's one of the things, like, I love to bring, like when I had you come on with Tony Toast, I can ask Tony a bunch of questions, but I can't ask him your questions. And you're gonna kick my ass in the screenwriter question. So why wouldn't I introduce your expertise into this interview? And so you talk about listening. That's like me live producing and just stepping back and letting these pros be pros. And the other thing about the listening thing, I'm curious what you think about this.
Mhm.
I've learned to listen for things, not to the person. I hear everything you're saying,
Right.
but that's not what I'm sorting. What I'm sorting is that I'm looking for the lever to pull to get you to a spot that no one else can get you to. Because that's my job as a spy, right? How do
Mhm.
I bring something that nobody else knows about that's important?
What here's the difficult thing that I find. I'm just curious, and we're just having a conversation now. Is how do you deal with when you know the subject, right, really well? You read the book, whatever it is, right? When you know a lot about them, how do you deal with interviewing somebody you really know and yet making it feel fresh? What I've found is I let them know before we start, I'm going to be asking you questions that I already know, but the audience is going to be like, well, why didn't you, or what happened with, you know what I mean? So I'll just ask the stupid, dumb question, you know, even though, they might be somebody I went to dinner with just last night or whatever, you know what I
Mhm,
mean? I'm
mhm.
just curious for you.
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple of things with that. One of the things is I'll say I'm asking this for the audience's benefit because I
Right.
have like, when you brought up Rust, I have to ask about Rust. I wasn't gonna ask about it, right?
Mhm.
But you brought it up and I'm like, the audience is gonna need that itch, that scratch, we gotta deal with that. So we did. We spent a few minutes on it.
Mhm.
And that's something I've learned to do better as a host is go, okay, let's cover that, but then let's take control and stop and then get on to the next thing, which I think we did pretty good. The other thing is because of the amount of experience or even specific experience as a spy, I can bring context in and I can say,
Mhm.
let me paint between the lines here from what Hilliard just said, because I've known him for a long time and I know these things. Like when we had that conversation, when you guys wrote your open letter, and you did say the thing about there's not a black executive in that building, and that
Mhm.
blows my mind, right? And so I
Right.
want to bring that up again. And that's kind of the stuff that I do that takes an old thing, but I bring it in again because it does create freshness and it continues to blow people's minds because not everybody hears everything I say on the show. I might have to say it 10 times for somebody to hear it once.
Well, here's you just talked about the black executive in the building thing. So before the Rona, my producing partner and I would go on like a meeting, right, or a pitch meeting, for example, and we would, pitch. Here's what we're gonna do, right? And there would be, the three, let's just say, white executives, and then one black junior executive, as an
Right.
example, and they would all be talking. She'd be sitting there quietly. Well, we stopped allowing that to happen. So we would listen to them, and then we would turn to them on purpose and
Yeah.
say, "What do you think?" So that they have a voice. And 9 times out of 10, it's the opposite of what they had to say.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? And they
Yeah.
all lean in like, "Oh, like we would have. Oh, we totally support that theory, right?"
I love it.
and
I
and
love it.
and and that's what happens is because they don't think you know,
Hmm.
right? Like I said,
Yeah.
it's that whole mentorship program thing, because they think you came in as a receptionist and now you're a junior, development executive or whatever, manager or whatever. They think you don't know, but they don't really. They didn't do that much work in the fact that you've actually done these things to get you here, or that you worked for the former executive at whatever and they allowed you to sit in all this stuff already. You know what I mean? Whatever the thing is, I'm nosy, right? When I bring in, younger, emerging writers or whatever, I ask them questions. I want to know where they are. I want to know
Yeah.
what their backgrounds are so that I can know what to expect. So I'm not just thinking because I don't see their IMDb page that
Mm,
they don't know anything, you
right.
know? Some of these kids have done a lot more than you. They just have done it on a different scale.
Sure.
You know what I
Yeah.
mean? So find out and ask the questions and you'll be surprised.
Yeah. Yeah. Allow people to surprise and amaze you, right? And
Exactly.
they have a chance to. Yeah, you're totally right
Exactly.
about that. That's one of the best things. What else, man? We're almost out of time. I know your
No
time's
problem.
precious.
Thinking. Like I said, I'm also, at a point where I'm ready to get, back on a show. So that's
Yeah.
been fascinating. Been up for a couple cool things. Nothing landed yet. It's funny, I keep going up against, a lot of my other friends who have like 10 other shows behind them. So you're never gonna beat them out unless it's like something specific, like Deadly Class. Like I knew nobody could beat me in that
Right.
because of my background in, the punk rock world.
Mhm.
So sometimes you just have to lean into that thing. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Of whatever that superpower is for yourself.
Mm.
You know. But like I said, I'm also hoping, one of these shows, goes, and if they do, I'll, possibly be able to co-run a show, possibly. We'll see. You know what I mean? So, um, that would be awesome. Um, like I said, just really knee deep in this post production on this movie. I'm really trying to, I'm watching a lot of documentaries again just to get my head in that space,
Ah, right.
just like I do when I'm writing, something about fucking Emmett Till or something. I go into that, watching all the docs and reading books, and I just go into research mode. So I'm kind of doing the same thing with the surf thing, where I'm just watching lots of like watching the Eagles and the Beatles new Get Out movie. I'm like everything. I'm just trying to see what people are doing and how I could be creative on my no budget,
Yeah.
and still make it look like it could be a movie. You know what I
Boy,
mean?
that Beatles movie is something else.
Yeah,
It's
dude.
it's so, so, so good.
It's
Yeah, I love
beautiful, I
yeah,
think.
it's gorgeous. Yeah.
Fucking
You
Peter
can't
Jackson, it's gonna be beautiful.
yeah, yeah, and he didn't rush it. I mean, he didn't rush it at all.
Mhm,
There was something I was gonna ask you about, you're talking about all those things. Shoot, I wish that would come back to me. Well, either way,
mhm.
I don't wanna keep any longer. I know you got
Okay,
things to do,
no
important
problem.
people to talk to, money to make. I love it, man. I love that we have this relationship. I wish I would have timing-wise been able to come up and hang with you, but, it's always good, man, to visit with you, and I hope that
Mhm,
anybody who watches the show gets a chance and goes and checks out Screenwriters Rant Room and any of the other projects you work on.
thank you.
It's remarkable, man, that we have this relationship and that you just continue to just smash it. It just warms my heart to see you and your husband's adventures and everything. It just you give me a big smile. That's what I want to say.
Thank you, man. Appreciate it. Always good to see you. I miss seeing John. I haven't seen him in a minute, so
Well, I'm gonna make him come down. I just got to talk to him. By the way, when I was searching for you on the internet, it came up that Nathan East, and I was like, "See, this is." Remember, we had the. He's like one of the
yeah.
for those who don't know, he's like one of the most notable bass players in the whole world. I mean, he's as big as you can be, and it's neat that because of the show, you and
Mhm,
I and cross pollinating so much, like there's these other people that are also brought because I like to bring people into your office.
mhm.
I'm like,
Yep.
here comes the guy that wrote Ford versus Ferrari, and you're like, I'm not gonna have time to talk to him, and you're like, all right, I gotta talk.
That was a fun one too. That was dope.
Oh,
That was dope.
so good. All right, stand by. I'm gonna
Mhm.
turn this thing off. Hey,
No
thanks for
problem.
watching the show. I
Thank you.
really appreciate it. Right here, you can subscribe. Please do that. It makes the show grow. Hit that notification bell so you know which incredible guest is coming up next. Down below is the PayPal link. You can put a small subscription in. That is an enormous help. All that money goes right back into the show. And then right up over here are the next episodes you should listen to, curated by yours truly. Thank you so much